everyone here today, and thank you for your support.
Good morning. As most of you are aware, the UK TCM regulation has been finally stopped after more than 10 years up and down, which made the circle back to the original point. Some other European countries are also in a very difficult situation of their TCM regulation. Why? Besides mainland China, Australia is the first country which has the nationwide TCM regulation. What are the successful experiences, and are there any lessons we can learn from them?
Yes, actually, what is TCM regulation, and what's the advantage and the disadvantage of the regulation in the UK and Europe? And is there any new rule to the TCM regulation? And that is all affect our career here. So, yes, so today we are very pleased to have our Ireland guests. So we have, so as you see, we have Professor Ms. Hui Junsi, the Vice President of ATCM, and who is been working on the TCM regulation for over 15 years and spent lots of time and energy on it. He will give us a talk. And also Ms. Charles Bach, the very famous Western TCM and Chinese herbalist in the UK, and chair of the British Acupuncture Council, and Professor Michael McIntyre, the president of the EHPA, the European Herbal Practitioner Associations, and and also Mr. Gert Amstad, the very famous Chinese medicine practitioner from Germany, and he's a president of TCM Congress in Gothenburg. That Congress has been going on for 46 years. He's been doing that for many, many years. He's very experienced. And also Professor Pei Sui, also is one of the most successful scholar med from 19 Chinese medicine university. He has a very successful clinic in the Belgium, and he's secretary of this association of the Belgium TCM.
Okay, let's start our first session of the topic regulation forum, the advantage and disadvantage of TCM regulation. Each speaker will have 10 minutes for their speech. After all of them, we have about 10 minutes for discussion and question. Thank you.
I'm the first one to talk about regulation for Chinese medicine in the UK. And I have been involved in this procedure since 2002, when the Department of Health set up the first working group, herbal medicine regulatory working group at that time. And now it's over a decade now, from the beginning, from the House of Lords report in 2000, actually the whole procedure is now 15 years. And maybe I should make a correction about Dr. Wang just mentioned TCM regulation in the UK has finally stopped. Maybe it's too early to say it's finally stopped. but surely the government seems to be making a U-turn, but the final decision not made yet. Yeah, not made yet, which means we still have some possibility or some hope to restore the statutory regulation for Chinese medicine in the UK. And the recent development was the report by Professor David Walker, who was the chair of the Department of Health working group, the third working group during 2014. And his report basically to deny the regulation, statutory regulation for herbal medicine and Chinese medicine. But that report was only a recommendation to the government. It's not a final decision yet. This guy, Professor Walker, was appointed as working group chair last year by the government, by the Department of Health. The background actually was the change of mind from the government since the appointment of a new minister, Dr. Dan Porter. I don't want to be rude, but I must mention this name because we are not happy with him at all. He was appointed as the minister in charge of the regulation in September 2012. And since he was in power, the whole procedure, like a U-turn, he just wanted to stop the process, but he tried not to say so. Pretend he is still moving forward, but actually he tried to make a U-turn. And I have good news actually. Since the general election this year, Dr. Dan Porter was sacked already. He's no longer the minister. We're glad to see he goes, really, and we should make some further strong voice to the new government, to restore the procedure, to move forward again. Yeah, this has been like I mentioned, 15 years. I remember 5 years ago when we had a regulation forum in London. I mentioned that time was already 10 years, and the regulation was not ready at the time yet. I mentioned 10 years time in China, the country can double its GDP in 10 years. But here, we talk about the regulation for 10 years and nothing happens. And just talking and talking and never finish the talking. And hopefully this new government and the Conservative, we hope it's a reliable government to keep its promise, because we know the regulation was announced by the government in 2011 already, and I hope the government should not change their mind again and again. That's all I want to say for now.
Good morning, everybody. Actually, I go back to the late Qing dynasty in the field of Chinese medicine. So I've been watching our attempts at state regulation for something like 30 years. And we started off, we were told that we had to bribe an MP, lobby. So we gave an MP Bill Cash a few £1,000s a year every year to represent our interests. Bill Cash lived up to his name, stuck it in his back pocket and did nothing. So we've actually been working on trying to get state regulation for a long, long time. And I've actually been very supportive of that for many years. But in the last few years I've come to question it, I've come to doubt the whole issue of of us seeking to have state regulation. And so I think the first question that we need to ask, well, there are very strong arguments both for and against, but the first question that we need to consider is actually what would we want to get out of it? What are we aiming to achieve by fighting to get state registration? And the next question is, if we did get state regulation, would that actually give us what we want? I think we need to have a proper discussion about that as to the realities of state regulation. We might imagine that it would help protect standards in our profession. We might help that it would ensure that everybody professing to offer Chinese medicine treatment had got a degree in it. But there's our experience in the British Acupuncture Council with a sort of kind of state registration, the Professional Standards Authority, is that doesn't always quite work like that. We might imagine that it would stop the erosion of our ability to prescribe some Chinese medicines, but again, we have to question whether it would really do that, or whether it would perhaps even do the opposite. The mind of the regulator is a very strange thing. It's very different to the mind of a Chinese medicine practitioner. So, for example, I found out that in Denmark, they banned the use of goat cheese. You know, goat cheese, the berries? And the reason they banned it was because they found that in the 1970s, in Australia, a goat had died, and in that field there was a goat-cheeser bush, and they suspected that possibly the goat had died because of the goat cheese. So in a regulator mind, that goes, we better ban goat-cheeser across the whole of Denmark, because in 1979 somebody suspected a goat might have died in Australia by eating goat-cheeser. When the British Acupuncture Council got Professional Standards Authority accreditation, which is a type of regulation, we were told, well, they looked into our whole procedures and they said, we're very concerned that you're getting so few complaints. You are only getting 2 or 3 complaints a year against practitioners. That's not enough. We need a lot more complaints than that. We would expect a lot more complaints from patients against your members, because there must be something wrong. So they said to us, are your members at the beginning of a new therapeutic relationship with a new patient, you first have to give them a card. Here's how to complain against the practitioner. Now, for me as a practitioner, if you want to establish a relationship of trust, what you don't want to do is set a story, set a narrative. Oh, first you come along, I do a diagnosis, I do a course of treatment, and then at the end of that, you sue me. That is just so bad. But in a regulator's mind, that made perfect sense. So we've got this issue of actually we would be engaging with people who think in a very, very different way to ours. Now, I'm not totally against regulation or totally for regulation, but I do think that we should have a really clear understanding of what it is we're actually doing. It's not possible. It's quite possible that things may get worse, because, for example, the Professional Standards Authority, we imagined that they would look at the British Acupuncture Council's gold standard training in acupuncture, and they would go, that's it. That's the benchmark for quality acupuncture practice in the UK. But what they've done since then is let other people onto that scheme, that registration scheme, with much lower standards of acupuncture training than us. So actually it hasn't worked at all in terms of maintaining standards. So then we've got to ask the question of why do we want to have state registration? I think if we really are honest about this and we think about it, it's really an emotional one. The real reason we want state registration is because we feel frustrated, that we feel we don't get enough recognition for what we do, that we're highly qualified, serious practitioners of medicine, and we have a pride in what we do, and we would like that to be recognised. So that's what we really want, I think, from state registration. And the question is whether we would actually get that from state registration, or whether we get that in another way. So the reason that, having watched the business of us trying to get state registration for 30 years, and having failed again and again and again, and we go to Whitehall and we shake hands and we smile and we have meetings, we have more meetings,